Today's project is working on a knitted star. And the equipment that you need for this is your Addy circular needles that you received in your package. These are the squared needles, so they have a little bit of a ridge on the side. They've been kind of, well, on four sides they've been squared, so they're going to feel really interesting in your hands. Some stitch markers are handy. I have 5 of them here. And of course the yarn from your kit. I'm using a different yarn for this demonstration, but that's okay. Use the yarn from your kit. You've got a beautiful hand-painted skein of Epic to work from. I'm going to do a knitted cast on. This edge is going to form the outside of the star, so I'm going to do a cable cast on. It's a knitted cast on. It means I don't have to have a very long tail in my hands. So take your slip knot that you make and put it on one end of your circular needle, and then with the other end of the needle you're going to knit a stitch. So I'm inserting my my knitting needle into the stitch that's on my left hand needle, wrap the yarn around and pull it through to do a knit stitch. I like to take the tip of the left hand needle and insert it in the underside of that stitch to give it a little bit of a twist, and then you snug it up. To make the next stitch, you're going to go in between the 2 stitches on the needle. So just slide your knitting needle in between those 2 stitches, yarn over to do a knit stitch, bring that yarn over up between the 2 stitches, and again you're going to pop it back onto the left hand needle, but to incorporate a nice little twist in the bottom, take the tip of the left hand needle and put it into the stitch on the right hand needle, and then just snug it up lightly. You want those stitches to be able to move on the needle. You don't want them to be too loose or too tight. So I'll show you another method for getting that just right. Insert your needle in between the 2 stitches, yarn over, pull that yarn over through to the front of the needle, take the tip of the left hand needle and dip it under the front side of the loop to put it onto your left hand needle, and before you snug it up, slide your right hand needle in between those 2 stitches. Now you can give it a good tug and your needle's already in place. This speeds up the process immensely. So make your loop, put your needle in between, snug it up, yarn over, make your loop, put your needle in between the last 2 stitches and snug it up. Every 14 stitches we're going to put on a marker. So I've got 2, 4, 6 stitches here now. So I'm going to make 14. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'll slip a stitch marker onto my left hand needle and carry on. There we go. Once you get past the stitch marker, things are a little easier. This just helps you to count. So we're going to do, that's why I've got 5 stitch markers. I think I probably only need 4. The 5th one will be the beginning of the round marker. So keep going, casting on your stitches and placing your stitch markers until you have the number of stitches required for in the pattern. I'll meet you back here at that point. Here we are. Here I am anyway. I've got 70 stitches cast on to my circular needle, and I've got a marker in between every 14 stitches. I didn't need that 5th marker because it would just fall off the end of my needle here, so I'm just going to put that back in my case when I have a moment. So now we're going to work on row 1. The pattern repeat is a multiple of 14 stitches, so that means each time you complete a repeat you should work your way up to a marker. That just helps you to realize if you've made a mistake or cast on the wrong number of stitches or anything like that as you go. So the first instruction is to knit 6 stitches. So we'll do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Slip 2 together knitwise. So I'm going to take these 2 stitches here, slip them together as if to knit. So just one smooth movement like that. Then I'm going to knit 1 and then pass those 2 slip stitches over. So I'll take the tip of my left hand needle, put it under both of those slipped stitches, and you may have to bring it forward to the point of your needle to get that done, and you just slip them over the knitted stitch. Then knit 5, and that should take you to your marker. When you get to your marker, just slide it from your left hand needle to your right hand needle and repeat the instructions. So knit 6, then slip 2 together knitwise. So put your needle past 2 stitches on the left hand needle, slip them as if you were knitting them. So you're just sliding them from one needle to the other. Then knit 1. Then you're going to pass those 2 slip stitches over top of the knitted stitch. So use your left hand needle to get under both of those 2 slipped stitches, and then slide it forward on your needle till you get really close to the tip and slide them over like that. If that makes you really nervous, you could put them over one at a time. All right, let me try that for you. So we knit 6, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, when you slip those 2 stitches over together, you do want to do that in one movement. So put your needle behind, put your right hand needle behind the 2 stitches on your left hand needle, slide them over to your right hand needle as if to knit, knit 1, and then if you're having a hard time getting under both those slip stitches, you can approach them one at a time. There's 1, and there's 2. But try sliding both of them over at the same time. It really is a smoother way to get that job done. Okay, carry on with row 1, and I'll meet you back here for row 2. All right, so I've just finished row 1 here, and I just wanted to show you how working on circular needles to knit flat is really the same as working on a straight needle. So now that I'm at the end of my row, I'm just going to turn my needle around like this and move the now empty side into my right hand and continue to work from right to left across this side. The circular part of this needle is just hanging out, making sure that if I drop a needle, I don't lose it. All right, row 2. Row 2 is pretty simple. You're going to knit 5, and then it says to slip 1 with yarn in front. So bring your yarn to the front of your work in between your needles, slip the next stitch, and then take your yarn to the back so that you can knit your stitches, and that's to keep a bar from forming on the other side. So knit the rest of the stitches up to your marker. There should be 6 of them. And then slip your marker over, and let's do that again. So knit 5, you slip the next one with the yarn in front, so bring the yarn to the front of the needle, slip the stitch over, take the yarn to the back, and knit the next 6 stitches. All right, carry on with that, and I'll meet you for row 3. All right, round 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11 are all like round 1, in which you're going to do, you're going to knit the number of stitches instructed, do a double decrease at the center, and repeat for each of the marked segments of your star. The same thing with the even numbered rounds. The only thing that you'll be doing differently is decreasing number of stitches when you slip the yarn in front. So I'm going to, in this video, then skip ahead to round 13, where we actually do something different. So keep going with your knitting and on both sides of this garter stitch star, and I'll meet you at round 13. All right, so as promised, I'm back here joining you for row 13, and I just wanted to show you a little trick too about knowing which is the right side and which is the other side. So if you were confused while you were working on this, or if you do get confused while you're working on this, the row where you do the decrease, it ends up with this really nice little pattern that runs up the front of it, and the side where you slip the stitch with the yarn in front, it doesn't have that pattern on that side of it. So when this sort of slipped stitch portion is facing you, then you know that you're on an odd numbered row, and when that slip stitch side is on the other side, when it's facing you like this, then you know that you're on an even numbered row. So here we are working the last row, the last odd numbered row, and the instructions are simply to knit two together all the way across. So that's what I'm going to do, dropping my stitch markers as I come to them. You might have taken your stitch markers out earlier, and that's fine. This is the fastest row. Okay, so now you're going to cut your yarn. I'll leave myself about a 6-inch tail. And the next step then is to thread these stitches through the loops on the needle. So thread your wool needle with the cut end of your yarn, and holding your wool needle and your knitting needle together just like they were two knitting needles, you're going to slip the stitches onto your wool needle. There we go. Thread your tail through those stitches and pull tight, and you can see that your star is almost done here. There's just one more little step, and that's to seam up the sides. So what I like to do is thread my stitches through. I'm going to thread them through a second time because that'll make this center nice and neat. So I'm coming around to where I entered those stitches here. There's 1, 2, hard to see, 3, 4, and 5. I'm entering them a second time. And when I pull it tight, I'll get a nice round center in there, like that. And now I can use this tail to seam up this edge of my knitting. So how to sew the seam? You really just want to keep those two edges together, and the star isn't necessarily reversible, but it could be. So I'm just going to sew this together by joining the little bumps along the edge. What do I mean by that? Well, essentially I'm going to take my needle and just kind of go under a couple of bumps on this side, and then under a couple of bumps on this side. You see on the edge of your work, you just have a little bit of a bump on the edge. I'm going to draw it up, and I'm going to come back here and stick my needle under a couple of bumps on the edge here, and then come back here and feed it, just basically just coming through the edge of the star. Pull it tight, go back here, just going right along the edge here. And my last stitch, I'll come up through the edge, just bring it up through the edge of the body of the star. So it's kind of coming out in the middle of this chain. I missed it just a little bit, so I'm going to just want my thread to come out in the center of this stitch here, and then I'm going to come over here and join these two edges together with just a little bit of a loop. I'll make this nice and big. So here my yarn has come up through the edge. I've gone underneath a couple of the bars, the chain edge of that stitch, and I'm going back in here again. Do you see how that just forms a little loop that joins everything together? And I'm going to snug it up. All right, so my seam is practically invisible, but I mean, you could just whip stitch it together as well. That's fine. To deal with this tail, I'm just going to weave it back and forth like this along the edge of my star. Okay, and then I'm going to trim it off. And this tail that was from my cast on edge, I'll do the same thing. I'm just going to weave it along here. Just back and forth along the edge of the star. And I'll trim that one off, and you'll see that there's a little bit, left a little bit of edge sticking out here. That's because when I go to block this, like wash and block this, it's going to disappear into my star. So the next step then is to soak your star in some cool water, just room temperature or colder. Soak it for 20 to 30 minutes, and then bring it back out and pin your star out. You'll find that when the wool is wet, it gets quite stretchy. So pin your star out to give it nice, nice even points. Let it dry like that, and then hang it up and enjoy. You can also embellish your star. You may find that in your package there may be some embellishment things that come out. So hang on to your stars, make as many as you can with your mini skein, and then decorate them after you've blocked them, and hang them up and let them adorn your place. All right, thanks for participating, everybody.